Hey guys, just picked up a 10+5 rated random game against somebody rated 12.99 and we have ourselves a Scandinavian. So I'm going to try and beat this guy, earn myself 2 rating points. Alright, so I've got an overwhelm on this pawn, 2 attackers, no defenders, may as well just take it. And now d4. So I want to develop, I think if this bishop comes out, then I might pin the pawn. See, because what I like to do is if white moves the bishop, then pinning the knight means that if he moves the bishop back to break the pin, which is one of his options, then he has to move the bishop again, so he's lost the tempo doing that, right? So I'm not going to play that yet. So what's he thinking? He's either wanting to do this or he wants to play c4 and kick my knight away. If he plays c4, I can't go there. If he plays c4, I could actually go in here, couldn't I? So I'm going to put my bishop here. So if he plays c4, I'll go here. Oh, not there. If he plays c4... Alright, so it was the fianchetto. Not sure why he's done that, because he's got a dead pawn on d4. It's currently blocked off. Right, it's not going to be there forever. I still have the option of moving either of my knights to b4, but what I want to do right now is I want to develop. So e6, e5 doesn't make sense, it's attacked 3 times. So e6, get this bishop out, possibly with check, possibly with a pin on a knight. Does that work? Yes, pin on the knight. What I'm threatening to do is take, and he can't recapture because I recapture them with the fork on king and rook. So that's all right. Should be using, let's think it through, 60 move game, plus 5 seconds each move, that's 5 minutes. So we treat it as a 10-minute game divided by 60 moves. That's 4 moves a minute, that's 15 seconds is what I should be roughly taking. Okay, so now the queen's come here as a second defender on the knight. He also has the option of castling long now, in which case his king's going to be here. 2 defenders on that, only 1 attacker. Queen can't come out anywhere really useful. I'll just put my queen here. Kind of flexible. Then I've got this option of dropping the bishop in, trying to take out the dark squared bishop and weaken him around there. I'm just going to move my bishop here, threaten to take the knight, double and isolate his pawns on the king side. Right, now, this threat now does not make so much sense because all I'm doing is actually opening up a line for his rook, right, by removing his b pawn, so sorry, his g pawn. So there's not much reason to do that. That's defended twice. I'm inclined to castle long myself. My opponent's just said 1640. Okay, now what's going on? Actually, the knight's the only defender of this pawn, so if I take that knight, pawn takes, knight takes. Is that useful? Or just knight takes, because then if he takes me, I get his rook, but then actually he gets 2 minor pieces for a rook, so that doesn't really make sense. Okay, let's take this. And I like this now because it also attacks this pawn, so let's go ahead and do that. The knight's on an undefended square, but I do have c5 as an option, or just retreating the knight. Still thinking I might castle long, like my opponent has. I like the fact that I've won a pawn, and this is just a matter of basic coordination. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. But I do have this, winning another pawn and coming with an attack on the queen. So if I do that, what's going to happen? Queen's not going to take here because pawn takes. fairly comfortable. I'd like to castle as well. Get my rook onto this now open d-file. I'm attacking your queen. You have to notice that. Where's my opponent from? India. Let's check out his profile while we're here. Rapid, highest is 1306, so if he beats me, he'll hit his highest, but he's only played about 140 rapid games. He's only played a handful of blitz. Okay, so he's not played too much. Got 2 attackers on this knight. It's currently defended twice, but one of those defenders is the queen, who is herself currently under attack. Therefore, the queen really needs to keep defending the knight, but she can't defend it from here, can't defend it from here, can't defend it from here, so she's really forced to go to d3. And if queen d3, I can just drop my knight back and hit her again. Then if I wish, I can maybe capture this bishop, and if b takes, that's not fantastic, is it? So my highest is 1648. And if I can beat this guy, I'll be on 1642, which isn't bad. I haven't played any rated rapid in a while. Okay, so I've got knight here. Yeah. Whenever you find a move, look for another one. Can't see anything better than that right now. Yeah, it comes with tempo as well. I'm hitting the queen again. The knight's still undefended. I have to bear that in mind. I'm hitting the queen. I'm hitting this knight twice. Okay. Now she's coming down here to look at that, but I can distract her by exchanging on here if I wish. Oh, that's not a bad move actually, because now this is actually a fork, right? So yeah, I can get out of this by starting a trading war here. Because if knight takes, I'm hitting the rook, so bishop really should take. Then I can take again, then queen has to take back. And I'm going to be up 2 pawns. The question is that a winning position? Or do I just take this bishop now? I see, this pawn is not likely to be massively instrumental. Sure, it doesn't really make sense to give up pawns, but I'm thinking bishop and takes. But then I have to move this knight. Then I can... Do you know what? I'm just going to trade everything off. Let's go into an ending. Oh, also I can't castle once this knight moves. That's a pain. I can always castle that way. So my opponent is going to have 4 pawn islands, look. And that is going to be hard to defend. Okay, let's take this. If bishop takes, I've got bishop takes. And that deflects the queen away from the attack of that. So I can't castle here because it'd be moving through check from this rook, right? I don't really want to castle there either because he's got an open b-file, which is what we talked about. I can start giving checks. But also, I can just maybe rook d8, try and trade off rooks as well. I have to bear in mind that this is now... Okay, I think I'm going to castle. I might stick my king on the h8 or f8, just to, you know, get out of harm's way. This is an option. Seems perfectly alright. So now, because I have a far superior pawn structure and 2 extra pawns, my extra pawns are actually these 2. All I need to do now is convert it. I mean, chess is about winning the game, and you don't get any extra points for style or artistic impression. I'd like to swap off queens even. You know, right now, this situation, look, I have 2 pawn islands, 1, 2, which means that these pawns can defend each other quite happily. The king can defend all the rearmost pawns on this side of the board. These pawns can go into a structure and be defended by rook or queen, and that gives me 2 spare pieces, right, to have fun. Right, he may be thinking about doubling up his rooks now. I'd love to trade queens. It's not going to happen in a hurry. So let's push f6. Now I've got 2 defenders on there. I can also engage a rook here as another defender. I could also just push the pawn. I could stick all my... Okay. Yeah, if he wants to come down... I can block him. I can let him move again. That's not an issue. So right now... Is the queen any danger to me? Not really. I might just push this to take this score away from the queen, but she's not going to want to come there. If she comes there, then I can do it. Okay, so rook a d8. Let's try and trade off one of his rooks. Every trade that happens only strengthens me. My power becomes stronger. Okay, what's undefended? That is, and that is. Push takes no. Do I want to play rook here? I'll play rook there. I mean, I might have ideas then of doubling up my own rooks on the d file. Okay, now I can just do that. So I saw that coming, and I knew that I didn't have to respond to it straight away because I could always play h6. So he's now pretty much wasted 2 moves in fiddling with his pawn. Pawn's also undefended, as is this guy here. Right, queen's coming here. Is he having a poke at this pawn? No worries. I'm not worried about this either. Yeah, it pins the rook, but isn't that just a free pawn? Oh, hang on. Hang on. Yeah. I think I have to move my king, because if, let's say I just take the pawn, this is a clever tactic. He can take this, and my first defender can't capture because it's pinned by the queen, right? And my king can't capture because there's another attacker, and the king can only be the last defender. So, what this means is I have to move the king. And now, it's not an issue. Now, rook takes, I win a rook. Rook takes again, I'm still up a rook. Happy days. That's a thought. Push the king to here or here. This pawn hangs, this pawn hangs. So queen takes is actually even a thought, I think, right now. Is it? Queen takes. It's okay. Just capture with it, a pawn. I think that was one of those moves that you play when you can't think of any move to play. Stiff neck. Can't see what his idea is now. Cannot figure that one out. Could hit the rook with a pawn. No real need. Thinking maybe queen here, just attack that. Pin that. Rook takes, that's okay. Just queen here. Rook takes is alright. Queen takes, bang. He's not going to sack his queen for a rook. He's not. He's just not. That's my concern. Queen takes, king takes, rook in here. But then I can run away. And in fact, I'm safe on e6. And I've got a queen. And his pawns are just going to fall apart. You do need to look after your pawn structure in the middle game. Okay, that's a thought. Rook takes, queen takes. I have to go there. Okay, so lift the other rook. Problem solved. 3 defenders. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I've got checks as well. I've got that, but it's covered by the queen right now. Now what's that an aid of? Really want to trade queens off. So he's defending that pawn. That pawn's not defended. That hits the queen. Hang on. And I could grab that pawn. I'm not worried about that pawn. I mean, it's not really instrumental. Just going to drop my queen back here. Do we have an increment here? 5-second increment. So 3 minutes left. That's not a bad start. Check here forces the king away. I also have check here, which is quite nice, but then no, queen still covers that square. Okay, that's a checkity-doo-dah. Got king here, but that falls to this. Yeah. So I'm going to retreat the rook. Still have 2 defenders on there and 2 attackers, so we're not worried. Okay. If this, he's got that. Don't want to allow the rook in there. Is it just time to push the e-pawn? No, because rook takes. Let's throw in a check. Now wherever he goes, I've got... No, I haven't. Okay. I'm going to go here, try and trade queens off. Now I do have more checks. Three attackers again. Throw in another check for good measure. You could block with the queen. That's the third legal move. Three attackers again on there. So now again I'm going to do this, and he doesn't have queen into the corner anymore because he's just moved on to the dark squares. The power of the dark squares. I'd love to go. That would be nice, would it? Oh, come on, let's finish this bugger off. This is getting on my nerves now. What about this? Rook there, are we concerned? This, hit the queen. Doesn't work. How do we finish him? Here, looking at queen and the a2 pawn. No, I'm not accepting a draw. I lose 6 points if I accept a draw. Okay, now I get the pawn. Now this is a possible threat. Oh, well, that's mate actually, because the rook's guarding that and that. And this is no good. I've got 3 defenders. 1, 2, 3. Count your defenders. 1, 2, 3. Is that in jury? Now, okay. This and the only legal move is queen blocks. If this rook wasn't there, I would have this deflecting the king away, and then I win the queen. But the rook is there. Okay, so do we trade queens and go for a finish? I think we kind of have to. I'm going to go here. Only legal move is this now. And now I push pawns up. And usually when you're against a king, you want your pawns kind of in line. Right, now I'm going to go here and try and trade off the rook. I'm 3 pawns up. Sunday, Monday, happy days. Let's throw in a check for giggles. Pushing pawns. Check again. And that just walks into a fork. See, that move was 1.4 seconds. No, it wasn't 2 seconds. Yeah. Good game, though. Very good game. Excuse me. Right, let's review. Where did he go wrong? And we're doing this from a human perspective, not a fish perspective. This is all normal. This is all good. All right. Now, he's not a pawn up. He's given back his pawn. I'm slightly ahead in development, but he has a central pawn. This as an idea I'm not convinced about, because look, he wants to fianchetto this bishop, but then it's going to be looking at the back of that pawn's head for a while. So I develop. He fianchettos his bishop to a fairly useless space. Now this is all maybe well and good if he castles that way. We'll see. I have to move another pawn in order to get out my dark squared bishop. He develops a knight. I develop with a pin. So that's 2 pluses. He now pins the knight on his own queen. I develop my queen. So now we're ready to castle. Move 8. We have a tension between the bishops, and I step out of the way, also attacking the knight, realising that this messes up his pawns. Also realising that the knight is the only defender of that. Which he doesn't realise. And he loses his first pawn that way. This pawn is now under attack and undefended, i.e. hanging, and he seems to miss it, so I go 2 pawns up. And I think all this is down to is literally scanning the board. This guy's nearly 1300 rated, right? Just scanning the board and saying what's what on the board. Now at this point I would really, really, really love to castle and get my rook on d8. I never managed to do that. Queen moves now attacking my knight. Knight comes back hitting the queen again. Queen moves with a fork. So that's a decent move. But I now decide to go in for some trading because look at his pawns, right? And it's this pawn structure that means he cannot really win come the end. So I castle and it does create a target, very much so, castling onto the g-file. Not sure if that was the right idea. I would have much preferred to castle here onto a file where my opponent has 2 pawns, so he's never going to come down there with rooks and queens. But this rook on here is a pain. So he castled along first onto the open file, so he owns the open file. And he does well here, you know, he starts to pile up his pieces against my weak g7 pawn. Now h6, but ultimately, simply, his lack of pawns is really going to cost him here. I'm not worried about pawn trading. It's all good for me. Yeah, he's got rid of his doubled pawn, defends. I'm just very conscious of g7. Not worried about this. Queen goes back. I throw in checks. He doesn't want to trade queens, which is correct. Absolutely, he should not be trading queens. I have to defend g7. I come in here with ideas. And now, this is a fork, right? He doesn't want to trade queens, but he also really, really doesn't want to lose one of his last pawns. He loses one of his last pawns. We trade queens off. Now, pawns side by side means that we're covering all of these squares. So the king now cannot get through this force field. So he's doing the right thing. He's trying to engage his king. I try and trade rooks. He's having none of it. I give a check. I pair up the pawns again. And obviously, when the pawns are like this as well, there's always opportunities for these forks. Throw in another check, and he just walks into it. And that's the end of the game. So, relatively simple. But you know what, guys? if you can win a game of chess using simple tactics and simple ideas, there's nothing wrong with that at all. You don't need brilliancy to win a game like that. But yeah, very interesting. So Himani825, thank you very much for the game. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. See you soon.